Hi, I'm J. Christian Adams. I'm president of the Public Interest Legal Foundation, and this is the Protecting Your Vote podcast, where we talk about all things related to the election law apparatus that governs our country, all the things that are happening you hear about, but we get down into the nitty-gritty sometimes and take you places you might not have expected. With me today is Hans von Spakovksy of the Heritage Foundation. Hey, Hans.
Hi, Christian.
Good to see you. Listen, one of the things I want to talk about today in this podcast episode is people are sort of amazed that there's so much election litigation, right? Why is Mark Elias out there doing seemingly everything? And, why is this law being struck down? Why does this seem to be infested with so much litigation buzz? And one of the things I think that is happening that people might not be aware of is what is going on in law schools.
Right. And
radically transformed from even 10 years ago. Now, let me set this up for the listeners and why this matters to our elections. 10 years ago, I did a story called Do They Teach Law at Harvard Anymore? And I did it at PJ Media. You can read it there. It's about 10 years old. And I found sorts, liberal stuff going on, a lot of crazy kind of things, but not super crazy. So you and I decided a couple of weeks ago to reinvigorate this series at PJ Media. And we took the top 10 ranked law schools from U.S. News & World Report, and we just looked at their course catalogs. And it's nuts, isn't it?
It is. It's astonishing, really, and outrageous, I think is the word for it. Look, law schools are supposed to teach students from a non-political point of view. I mean, the whole idea is to teach you the basics of the law, tort law, contract law, constitutional law, so that when you come out, you can be a competent, professional lawyer who can provide advice to clients, good advice, no matter who they are or what their issues are. The top 10 law schools, that's not what they are anymore.
Right, and what we've done is we started with what was number one? Was it Stanford? It was Yale. It was Yale.
Yeah.
And so I take the odd numbers and you do the even numbers on the rankings, right? And we're about halfway through the series.
Right.
You just published Columbia. Harvard is next, and boy, strap in for that one. Just a little teaser. I mean, you know this because I've sent it to you. Harvard actually has a course to teach students the philosophical and the behavioral values to protect women, to teach them the values of monkeys.
Yes,
right. I'm not making that up, am I?
Yeah, I thought you were being. I thought you were sending me an April Fool's joke when you sent me the course of that.
Right. It's a one-credit course at Harvard Law School to learn about the value system of monkeys, a particular species of monkey, by the way. It's not all monkeys that they teach about at Harvard Law. It's just one particular species. So one of the things we've noticed in this series as we've developed are clinics. Now, what is a clinic? Could you tell folks what that means?
Sure. Most law schools have clinics where you get credit. The clinic is run by usually either an adjunct professor, somebody's from outside, or one of the law professors. And the lawyers and the students provide representation. Most often in the past, it's been to provide representation to people who are too poor to afford attorneys, or there's actually a couple of law schools that help veterans, which is, I think, a good thing.
University of Chicago, I think. I had Chicago.
And the University of Georgia has the same thing. But now, as part of the curriculum, and what people need to understand is what law schools have turned into is political indoctrination training camps to produce these social warriors who are going to go out and attack American society, culture, and law on all of the issues, gender, race, you name it. Whatever is the most popular mistaken idea of the left today, they're training these people to go out and do that. And all the clinics now are intended to train lawyers to do that kind of thing. At Columbia, for example, it's like every single course talks about how the United States has systematic racism in everything it does, particularly the criminal justice system. And they actually have a course on how we can engage in abolition, closing down all of our prisons and getting rid of what they term prison slavery. Now, slavery, I think, ended in this country after the American Civil War. No. Prisoners are slaves, and any prisoners, convicted criminals, who are offered the opportunity to learn marketable skills and work, for a nominal rate in prison, that's prison slavery.
Right. And we'll get back to the clinics in a second, but I recall, I think Yale has a course teaching about revolution and how to foment it.
Yes.
And it's a course on mutiny, desertion,
right.
Graffiti. Literally, there's a law school course about graffiti. And so what you see when you read our series at PJ Media, again, it's called Do They Teach Law Anymore? Is these radicalized. It's not just like left of center, like
right.
Should these be same-sex marriages? It is deconstructive radicalization. And why, by the way, did we pick these top 10 law schools? Not only are they probably the worst, but they also, and when I say the worst, I mean the most radical, but don't they still have a good brand in this country?
No, they do. And I think I think any employer who needs to hire a lawyer should read our series and realize that they want a good, competent lawyer. They should not hire people from these schools. They should go to the state schools,
right,
where they're actually still trying to teach people how to actually practice as a lawyer, not be a social justice warrior who is out there trying to turn us into the Marxist utopia.
And you're not kidding, by the way.
No, I'm not kidding.
Those are serious words that are manifest in the series.
Yeah, and when you look at the curriculum and then you look at the incidents that are occurring at these law schools with these mobs of students attacking speakers who disagree with them and making it very clear they do not believe in a First Amendment, then it tells you I would not hire.
Yeah.
I wouldn't hire anybody from those 10 law schools.
Well, let me see your employer and raise you a judge, because there's plenty of conservative judges out there,
right,
or so-called Republican appointees on the federal courts of appeal, at the district court, the Supreme Court. Should conservative judges be wary about some of these applicants from law schools, even if they claim to be conservatives? I mean, if you're living in a toxic environment for 3 years, some of those, you're going to breathe in some of those fumes, aren't you?
Yeah, and you won't be able to trust that they will actually do an objective job of research, and I would be extremely concerned about those kind of clerks doing what happened at the Supreme Court with the Dobbs decision, leaking internal deliberations. I mean, I would just be very wary of hiring anyone because, like I said, these have turned into political training camps. That's what they are. They're not law schools anymore.
If you don't believe it, if you think we're exaggerating,
right,
read the series, Do They Teach Law Anymore? At PJ Media. We still have some schools to go. I think who's next? I'm up next.
You're up next with Harvard.
Harvard, right. I've got, like I said, that monkey values course is coming, right, when we learn about how people should take values from monkeys. But let's go back to the clinics issue. So one of the things I noticed is how the left has all these election law clinics, right?
Yes.
Where these law students at these elite law schools are participating in litigation, are working on pleadings, are working on witness development to bring cases in election litigation. Now, of course, Hans, aren't they doing it for both Republican and Democrat and right and left sides?
Well, of course not.
Of course not.
Because the message they're teaching is the propaganda myth that the left has been putting out, that any kind of election reforms, like clean voter rolls or requiring an ID to vote, which is just common sense to just about everybody except these folks, that's voter suppression. That is the only training that is going on, and that's one of the reasons so many of these advocacy organizations, I mean, they're getting these lawyers right out of these law schools already biased and prejudiced to think that, like I said, any kind of reform is somehow wrong, and that's generating all of these lawsuits.
Thank you, Hans von Spakovksy. The series is called Do They Teach Law Anymore?, where Hans and I do a deep dive in the so-called elite law schools, the top 10 in the country, and we show you what they're actually teaching straight from their course catalogs. It's a riot. It's fun. It's scary. You can find it at PJ Media. I'm J. Christian Adams. This has been Protecting Your Vote. We'll be back in a future episode with Dawn Palmer, Commissioner of the Election Assistance Commission. Thanks for tuning in.